Hello everyone, let's continue our unit on the human body. Here is the outline for our lecture. In the beginning, we will talk about the TED Talk, Deep Sea Diving in a Wheelchair. It's going to be a challenging one because the speakers talks like a scholar. She uses longer sentences and more academic vocabulary. That's why it might be slightly more difficult for you to process the information. For this reason, I will draw your attention to a Word file to break it down, okay, in details for you. After we finish the talk, we will do some practice to check your comprehension. Then we will do a bit more practice on the second and first conditional, and the third conditional will be talk about more in another unit. Okay, let's get started. Please turn to page 76 of your book. Okay, so you can see the title of this talk is Deep Sea Diving in a Wheelchair. I want you to take a look at the box about authentic listening skills. The skills here is following the argument. The talk, by Sue Austin is like an essay. It centers around one clear message. So later you can check whether or not you can identify it and checks how the speakers backs up this argument. So under the box, the section following the argument says certain words and phrases helps us follow the speaker's argument. For example, learning to play the game was difficult. However, I really enjoy it. That's why I decided to keep going. So you can see transitions are in italics here. To cue the audience where the argument is, and this is exactly what you need to try when you listen to the TED Talk later. Before we do that, don't forget to download the transcript from Tron class. You can either fill it in while I play the talk to you, or you can fill in the blanks after class to review. So these are the words we need to learn. First, assumptions. It comes from the word assumes. Assumes means to believe something without questioning it. So if you do that, you're making an assumption. So make assumptions means to assume. Pity means a feeling of sadness or sympathy. So usually you will hear people say, "What a pity." It means something sad happened. Narrative, it means a way to explain something. Extended means longer than usual. Exhilarating is a more academic way to say very exciting. So next time, if you want to describe something very exciting, instead of using very exciting, you can use exhilarating. Alienated, it means a feeling of having no connection with the people around you, which means you feel far away from others. Access means to get near. Internalize means to accept something so that it becomes a part of you. So now let me play you the TED Talk.
Talk about my journey, to talk about the wheelchair and the freedom it has brought me. I started using a wheelchair 16 years ago when an extended illness changed the way I could access the world. When I started using the wheelchair, it was a tremendous new freedom. I'd seen my life slip away and become restricted. It was like having an enormous new toy. I could whiz around and feel the wind in my face again. Just being out on the street was exhilarating. But even though I had this newfound joy and freedom, people's reaction completely changed towards me. It was as if they couldn't see me anymore, as if an invisibility cloak had descended. They seemed to see me in terms of their assumptions of what it must be like to be in a wheelchair. When I asked people their associations with the wheelchair, they used words like limitation, fear, pity, and restriction. I realised I'd internalised these responses, and it had changed who I was on a core level. A part of me had become alienated from myself. I was seeing myself not from my perspective, but vividly and continuously from the perspective of other people's responses to me. As a result, I knew I needed to make my own stories about this experience, new narratives to reclaim my identity.
Alright, let's pause here. Okay, so now I'm going to draw your attention to a Word file, to break it down for you. So in the beginning, the speaker talks about her initial feelings about being in a wheelchair, and extended illness changed the way she could access the world. And in the beginning, it was a tremendous new freedom. In the wheelchair, she feels freedom, and for her wheelchair is like an enormous new toy. For her, she can whiz around and feel the wind in her face. So in the beginning, being in the wheelchair for her was exhilarating. Everything was positive. And pay attention to the transition here. But, so whenever we see but, we know something different is about to come. When she, met other people, those people's reaction changed the way she understood herself. People also usually associate the wheelchair with words like limitation, fear, pity, and restrictions. These are all negative nouns. And these associations made the speaker believe that this is the way she should understand herself. So that's why she says, I realize I internalize these responses. So make these responses a part of her. And she started to feel alienated from herself. She didn't know herself anymore. For her, being in a wheelchair was not exhilarating anymore because of how other people perceive her. So as a result, so do you still remember from the authentic listening skills? It says after words like however or that's why or as a result, we usually see the argument. I knew I need to make my own stories about this experience, new narrative to reclaim my identity. So, what does she want to say in her talk? She wants to use a new way to explain her life in a wheelchair so that she can get her identity back. She wants to see her life in a wheelchair from the perspective of her own, not from other people's perspectives. So here is the information from the introduction. In the beginning, she felt freedom brought by the wheelchair, but the problem is assumption of what it feels like to be in a wheelchair are usually negative, and those assumptions, or I should say association, compel her to view herself in a negative way. in the end, she decides to create a new way to explain her life in the wheelchair, a new narrative to create her own identity, to get her own identity back, reclaim herself. Okay? So before we move on, let's keep learning some new words. Preconception. So pre means beforehand. So before you understand something, you already make some ideas about it. So conception is quite similar to the word assumption. Trace refers to marks someone leaves on the ground. Negotiate means to discuss in order to have an agreement. Okay, so let's keep listening to the talk.
I started making work that aimed to communicate something of the joy and freedom I felt when using a wheelchair, a power chair, to negotiate the world. I was working to transform these internalized responses, to transform the preconceptions that had so shaped my identity when I started using a wheelchair by creating unexpected images. The wheelchair became an object to paint and play with. When I literally started leaving traces of my joy and freedom, it was exciting to see the interested and surprised responses from people. It seemed to open up new perspectives, and therein lay the paradigm shift. It showed that an arts practice can remake one's identity and transform preconceptions by revisioning the familiar.
Alright, let's unpack.
So, when I began to die,
let's unpack this section. Okay. So it says, I started making work that aimed to communicate something of the joy and freedom I felt when using a wheelchair to negotiate the world. So for her, she uses her wheelchair to create art. And she used her wheelchair as a tool, okay, to talk, okay, about her story or to negotiate with the world. Okay, so for her, her chair is powerful. That's why she says this is a powerful chair, a power chair. And when people see the traces left by her wheelchair, they were surprised and interested. So from this practice of art, you can see she proves that being in a wheelchair can make people associate not only with limitation, fear, and pity, but with something artistic, something interesting, something surprising. And that's why we have a paradigm shift here. So what is a paradigm shift? So a paradigm shift is a major change in the concepts and practices of how something works or is accomplished. So a paradigm shift can happen within a wide variety of contexts. So a paradigm shift, to put it simply, means a major change in the way we understand something or understand a relationship. So I am going to show you some illustration to help you visualize what a paradigm shift is, because I believe even by the Chinese here, you don't understand what it is exactly. So take a look at the image here. What's bizarre? So you can see the pigeons here take over our roles as human beings. They are wearing headphones, checking their smartphones, eating breakfast while they are working, and then human beings are all naked like animals, right? So here in this picture, you can see animals are superior to human beings. So you can see a reversal of power. So here, this is an example of a paradigm shift. The same in this image here. What's strange? What's shocking? The duck is feeding human beings, and human beings are in cages. In reality, it's the opposite, right? So again, dogs in this picture becomes the more powerful. Okay, and human beings are the weaker ones. So we see a paradigm shift here as well. Okay, if we put it back to the context of our talk, what is the paradigm shift here? The paradigm shift here is the wheelchair is no longer associated with negative feelings such as pity or limitations. It is associated with something interesting people see from the art created by the wheelchair. Okay, so this is a paradigm shift. Okay, paradigm shift. And this is how the speaker makes her experience in the wheelchair positive, okay, to other people and also to herself. All right? Okay, so please, okay, try your best to understand what a paradigm shift here. Okay, before we move on, let's learn a few more words. Range, okay, means the number of something between an upper and lower limit. Association means a feeling of thought related to something or someone. Ecstatic means extremely happy. So next time, instead of saying very happy, why don't you say ecstatic? Literally means simply or just. Okay, so the speaker is about to talk about her experience, okay, of diving in the wheelchair, and she is going to show us a video clip of her scuba diving. And I skipped certain parts in the transcript, so you will see the word skipped on the transcript. Okay, those parts are not important. Okay, so let's take a look at the talk again.
2005, I realised scuba gear extends your range of activity in just the same way as a wheelchair does, but the associations attached to scuba gear are ones of excitement and adventure, completely different to people's responses to the wheelchair. So I thought, I wonder what will happen if I put the two together. And the underwater wheelchair that has resulted has taken me on the most amazing journey over the last 7 years. So to give you an idea of what that's like, I'd like to share with you one of the outcomes from creating the spectacle and show you what an amazing journey it's taken me on.
Alright, so I will fast forward when necessary. Otherwise, it's going to be too long. And if you want to take your time watching the entire diving process, you can do that on your own.
Amazing experience beyond most other things I've experienced in life. I literally have the freedom to move in 360 degrees of space and an ecstatic experience of joy and freedom. And the incredibly unexpected thing is that other people seem to see and feel that too. Their eyes literally light up and they see things like, I want one of those, or if you can do that, I can do anything. And I'm thinking it's because in that moment of them seeing an object they have no frame of reference for, or so transcends the frames of reference they have with the wheelchair, they have to think in a completely new way. And I think that moment creates a freedom that spreads to the rest of other people's lives.
Alright, let's unpack this section. So this section is mainly about her journey under sea. So her journey under sea proves to be an incredible journey to her and also an encouraging experience to other people, because by seeing her diving in a wheelchair, other people thinks it's possible to do anything given the fact that they can walk. Okay, they can walk. So let's take a look at here. I want one of those, or if you can do that, I can do anything. These are the responses people have to her experience under the sea. And she says it's because in that moment of them seeing an object, they have no frame of reference. So what is a frame of reference? So a frame of reference means a set of ideas or facts that a person accepts and that influences the person's behavior, opinions, or decisions. So let me use COVID-19 as an example. When the COVID-19 pandemic just broke out, people did not know how to deal with it at all because they had no frames of reference. So COVID-19 broke out in 2020, and at that moment, all the people in the world didn't know what it was and didn't know how to deal with it because we don't have any ideas or facts to rely on. Okay, so we have no frame of reference. So seeing a person diving in a wheelchair, this is definitely something most people have never seen before. So they don't have a frame of reference for that. Okay, so her journey, okay, not only proves her life in the wheelchair to be positive, okay, but also encourages other people to pursue what they want. Okay, so this is the outline for her journey, okay, under the sea. Scuba gears extends the range of activity, so do the wheelchair. So does the wheelchairs. And her experience under the sea should completely change people's association with the wheelchair, okay, of the wheelchair. And I already explained what a frame of reference to you already. All right, so for the last part, we have 3 words to learn, okay. Vehicle means a way of achieving something, okay, and the portal is an entrance. Spectacle means an unusual thing that attracts attention or interest. So spectacle, one example of a spectacle can be a woman diving in a wheelchair. That's definitely something unusual, right? Okay, let's finish the talk.
For me, this means that they're seeing the value of difference, the joy it brings, when instead of focusing on loss or limitation, we see and discover the power and joy of seeing the world from exciting new perspectives. For me, the wheelchair becomes a vehicle for transformation. In fact, I now call the underwater wheelchair portal because it's literally pushed me through into a new way of being, into new dimensions and into a new level of consciousness. And the other thing is that because nobody's seen or heard of an underwater wheelchair before, and creating the spectacle is about creating new ways of seeing, being and knowing, now you have this concept in your mind. You're all part of the artwork too.
Alright, this is quite a fascinating and encouraging talk, right? So from the concluding segment, we can see the speaker says her journey is to prove the value of difference, new ways of seeing, new ways of understanding what you see, or new ways to understanding who you are. Okay, and for her, her wheelchair becomes a vehicle for her to transform herself. Okay, so you literally see how she changed the way people think about being in a wheelchair from her journey here. She uses her wheelchair to create art, and she even dives in the wheelchair. Okay, so this is deep sea diving in the wheelchair. And from the last paragraph, this is the outline. We see the power of seeing things from different perspectives, and her wheelchair is a portal for her to start transforming herself. And this talk is, okay, a talk that aims to promote new ways of seeing. Okay, in other words, this is also a talk that emphasizes critical thinking about different things from multiple angles. All right.